Good day, everybody! How's it going out there? So, this week, I wanted to talk really quick about something interesting that happened to me over this past week. And, let me start off with a little background here. I read. I like reading. I like writing. And so, I kind of misspoke on one of these podcasts I did at Anthrocon, where I was like, this is like the, what was it called? Fangs and Fonts. Where we were having like this get-together at Anthrocon, and I basically said, well, I don't read as much as I should, and then like everyone over there was like, why are you reading more? And then the thing was like I was in front of a lot of fiction authors. So when I said I don't read a lot, I kind of misspoke a little bit. And what I meant to say is I don't read a lot of fiction. Because after I thought about it for a few weeks after I said that, I'm like, wait a minute, you do read. You just don't read furry fiction a lot, which when you're talking amongst your peers of people who write furry fiction, you tend to think of that as you're like, oh, well, I don't read a lot because I've only read one of Kyle Gold's books, which was only just this year. I read some short stories in some anthologies. I read some of the short stories in Furry Future. I think I read the Pulp anthology from cover to cover. But other than that, if you go to my Go Read Me page, my amount of furry fiction that I've actually read is very, very small. But what I do read a lot is nonfiction. I read a lot of nonfiction, probably to a very, very unhealthy degree. And not like nonfiction books, more like news articles and stuff like that from here and there and whatever. So I will browse news.google.com from time to time to look at articles. I even have a custom group in that news.google.com, and basically it's called Furries. So basically it looks for anything tagged with furry, and it'll put it in that group. So something interesting happened this past time when I went to that particular group this time around, and I want to share this discovery with you because it quite frankly is an interesting turn of events that really shows media evolving for this fandom a little bit, particularly in the written article world. And even though it happens within the non-article world as well, my tie is being very facetious today. Leave it. I do it live. Okay, there's the other part of it. And I'm going to look all professional and snazzy. Now that my OCD is out of the way, let me continue with what I was talking about. So, basically, the news articles were interesting to me because, let me just say this. Usually when I see articles in the furry section of the news area, it's either nothing to do with the fandom. It usually might have to do with pets or something like, well, your furry friends might get cold out there in the winter, or how you can protect your furry friends from being cold in the winter. Let them in, man. Don't kick your furry friends out of the house, man. That's not cool. That's not cool. You gotta have them indoors. What are you doing? They're people too. No, they're not talking about furry people. They're talking about pets in general. Another time when it comes up is if there's a convention going on, then it will talk about the convention. It's like there's a convention in town, and those ones are typical. Other ones that are typical are, what is furry? What is this furry thing? What is this furry thing? What is this furry thing? So let me show you the articles that I saw at the beginning of this year, which made me think that something might be going on here and changing a little bit. And maybe for the better? So let me click on the picture. So here, over here, this thing that's taking up my screen, and I'm going to shift over. So this is the article list that I saw coming up this time. So let's start from the bottom and work our way up. The bottom one you can ignore. The bottom one is mine. It's from Flavor.com. I wrote an article about 2016 and how much the year sucked for everybody. So, but, yeah, that aside. So setting that aside, all these other three are from more mainstream news blogish kind of thing places. I don't call them news. They're kind of news sites, I guess. I don't think it's fair calling news blogs, but I guess that's what Flair is, I guess. So it's not meaning as an insult. It's just a news website kind of a place that really doesn't have printed press affiliation. So the bottom one has to do with this interesting group that does little length feature things. I guess they're saying they're actors, they're furry actors, maybe. I didn't read that article. I plan on it at some point, which I probably should have done before writing this video so I could tell you what the article is about. But, so it's not about none of those three things I talked about earlier. It's not about general, like, what is a furry? Or, and then we move on, and we move up to the up one, and it's like, it's like pony nationalism and the furry Reich and the alt-right, the alt-furry things. And then the top one is a very, like, this was very well known in the writers' side of things, and then it's like, you know, how do we stand against Donald Trump? Well, we have a furry, gay, romance, Muslim romance novel. And then that article, they talk about Kyle Gold's book, in which describes a cougar individual from the Middle East, I guess, and they're a Muslim, gay individual. And he does discuss with the author of that particular article on, like, his research that he did for that, because he's not familiar with like, Kyle Gold wasn't familiar with the Muslim religion when he went into creating that book. And it's a fascinating article. But the most fascinating thing to me is, like, not only do all three of these not go like say furry, like it's something that needs to be explained. It's just part of the article title, and maybe that each article does kind of have like a one paragraph blurb going, this is what a furry is. But in general, it's they don't, like, it's treating the audience as if they already know what it is. Like, they're using the word as like it's just a general word and not asking what it means. Which is, we don't have to define it anymore? We don't have to define it first thing anymore? Like, we could say, well, these guys are furry actors, and we can just go, oh, yeah, we know what that means. We normal people know what that means. That's freaking cool. I'm sorry, but that just blows my mind that I have three articles. But not only that, but here's the interesting part, is that none of these are focused on sexual elements. None of these are focused on, like, not in any, lewd sense. None of these are focused on conventions. None of these are focused on anything except for snapshots of furry culture. And that is interesting. And not only are they snapshots of furry cultures, they're almost equal and opposite sides of the fandom. Like, not equal and opposite, but just, like, opposite sides. Like, I think that there's more Kyle Goldish individuals in the fandom than there are, alt-right furries. But alt-right furries do exist. They do exist as a thing. And the fascinating thing to me, like, when I read these two articles back to back, it kind of shows this interesting thing where the first article, talking about the using it as a way to teach people about gay Muslims, then I guess I can go back to the main video feed right now, because we're going to just talk about the two articles. But that was interesting, right? So the first article, like, it talks about using Allegory in order to understand something other than yourself, using things that can help put a degree of separation between the human element to it. And I do think that that's an important element of furry literature. When it becomes like Animal Farm or Watership Down, you can take a degree of separation from the human element, because, and you can even make it presentable to audiences that may not be recipient of those particular things before, because when the human when the human element's directly involved, people take things personally. But if you remove the human element from it with a degree of separation, they may take it a little less personally. Which brings me to so that's why something like Zootopia can be very well received and not be seen as preachy, because it's sort of driven towards kids. So if it's a little preachy, I guess it's fine, but it's not like Crash or anything. You know what I mean? It's not like they could separate it out and not make it be about race, but they could make it be about something else that kind of takes its place. And even even though there was some argument that they get a little heavy-handed with some of the parallels that they tried to drive, like the whole cute word, which I think did go a little, it was a little heavy-handed and it was a little hammy. But other than that, there were some subtle ones that I didn't even catch, as I said in my Zootopia review, that I was like, the touching the sheep's wool when he touches like the wool of it, like, he can't touch a sheep's wool. I didn't know that was actually emulating a thing about the hair of black people when they have that perm, and I guess it's a thing where people are like, is that real hair? And can I touch it and see if how it feels and stuff like that? And they're like, no, you don't touch my hair. What are you, crazy? I guess that's a thing, and I didn't know it was a thing. More you know. Also that you're a real articulate fella, and that's high praise thing. That section too, I guess, was a drawback to when people would compliment another person that that they're articulate when they have the assumption that people of that group typically aren't articulate. So they're praising the individual, but at the same time, when they're praising that individual, they're kind of showing how low of a bar they have for everyone else within the group that they're complimenting. And that's another thing from the Zootopia thing. So there's a degree of separation where you don't really think about those things until you actually think about those things. And that is how animal allegory can be used in such a clever way of masking very personal things in a way where you can discuss very deep, very personal topics without getting people flustered. That being said, there is a dark side to this kind of tool. Anthropomorphism is a tool. Don't get me wrong. You can use it to promote good work. You can use it to promote goodness in other people, but you can also use it to promote evil or wrongness in people. And this is where the Mashable article comes into play, because they talk about how Pepe the Frog was coerced by the alt-right in order to be used as a symbol, and they became he was so used often that he became as a hate symbol, even though the original author didn't intend that. Like it's in another whole can of worms that we'll probably discuss in a later video. But there's also the idea of using animal symbology to promote enforcing a lack of diversity, and their animal and Mashable. The Mashable article, I gotta say, wasn't as good a quality as the Slate article with Kyle Gold in it. But as an article itself, I think it missed. It says, well, these guys are pro-Trumpers and whatnot, and then they say they make the claim, it's like, well, there's always been some sort of tie. Like someone makes a claim in the article that there's always been some sort of tie between, the hard right and animal allegory, when it's like the distinction they make is kind of dubious. If you're going to talk about using animal allegory in a way that's that propagandizes, not allowing, not intermingling and trying to remain pure and stuff like that. There's a North Korean propaganda piece, it was the squirrel and the bear or something like that. It was I can't remember. It's the squirrel and the weasel or something like that. And they basically have the Americans as portrayed as wolves, and it's a whole propaganda thing. And I'll probably link to one of the for educational purpose. I'll link to one of them up there. But basically, like, the whole idea behind the cartoon is propaganda of the North Koreans trying to show that, you know, these things are, like, basically trying to use animal allegory to teach children about, you know, their way of life, and the, you know, using it as the state's thing. And we, as Americans, also used our cartoon characters for propaganda purposes back in World War II. That's very well known. So, you know, but of course, people say at the time of war, people promote very askewed kind of things because their country's at war, and people can argument that. But that being said, like, it kind of is interesting to me at the very end, and I guess I'll wrap this up, is furries. It's like it's interesting that these two articles next to each other is like, furries are humanity's savior, and then the next one's like, furries are gonna save us from Donald Trump, and then the next article next to it's like, the furries are the ones who promoted Donald Trump. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like this whole, like, you're like, we're the savior, and we're the agitators at the same time. It's like these two articles next to each other are kind of like this yin and yang kind of thing going on, and it's fascinating that actual non-furry articles talking about the furry fandom have become this interesting. They're not talking about doing the hibbity-dibbity. They're not talking about, you know, bedroom behaviors or the costumes or anything like that. They're just talking about furries in the world, in the context of the world in which we live in at large. And it's fascinating, and I think that it's about frickin' time. Obviously, I don't, you know, obviously it's like, do I wish that, you know, that maybe the circumstances were a bit different for these articles existing, like that they didn't have to go finding and saying, we need someone to protect us from our government, so I'm going to, you know, look at reading these fiction books. Absolutely. I would, you know, I'm sure Kyle Gold would also, like, if he could trade that article for not having Donald Trump as president, I'm sure Kyle Gold would take that. It's like, you keep that article, Donald Trump's not president. Absolutely. I'm sure that, you know, of course the alt-writers are like, yeah, of course we want an article and we want Donald Trump as president, so they're kind of in the opposite boat. Me, I'm centralist. I work with what I get. And I always have worked that way. It's like, you know, as much as everything tries to work against me, it's like, or if things try and work against me, I try to work within the boundaries of which the limitations of life give me and try to work with it, as opposed to against it. Though working against certain elements is always my goal, particularly if Donald Trump does decide to go into the whole, you know, harming gay individuals thing. Actually, I will work against him on that full-heartedly. And I will, you know, say that he's doing these, you know, despicable things, and that'll be pointed out. But furries in and of themselves are diverse, and we're not going to save you. We're not going to save humanity, and we're not going to destroy humanity. We can only take so much credit. It's up to you guys, really. It's up to you human beings out there, you know, whether humanity succeeds or fails. And, you know, as a human being in a costume, I gotta say, I can work my best to do what I can with the tasks in front of me. But I can't solve everything, and neither can anyone. So, it is probably a great honor and a great privilege for Kyle Gold to see his work praised as sort of an aside that, you know, that as a sort of a way to, you know, as a sort of an element that helps protect from the vicious world at large. And that's pretty high praise. And and hopefully his books do that, and hopefully any articles or any videos or any things that I produce can do the same for at least somebody out there, and that would be a nice goal to have. And I think everyone does that, and I would hope anyone who creates works within the fandom or outside the fandom does so, creates things with the intent of bettering the lives of others, themselves and others at the same time, and mostly for others. But and I think that if most people come to that conclusion and try to create great works for other people to enjoy and to bring joy to their lives, I think the world would be a better place, and even more so than just one furry novel or one furry group or whatever. But I guess that's kind of drawing up to different areas and stuff like that. So I just wanted to share this interesting little thing I saw in the Furry News. Hopefully, in the future, more articles will be written, kind of talking about furry culture without delving too much into the details of what furry culture is, and just letting it be out there and things like that. These 3 articles seem to have done that, and to have 3 of them right in the same time slot was amazing to me. But tell me what you think. Do you think that articles like this will be more common in the future? What is your take on this? So kick a comment down there, kick the likes, kick the subscribes if you wish to. I'm going to get the hop out of here. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next time. Have a good day, everybody.